The moment you even bring up the idea of race in America, you immediately have people fall into partisan positions about who's doing what for whom or who's doing what to whom from political perspective, not from moral perspectives.
Now, as far as Latinos and where they see themselves going in the future, they very much care about immigration, but it's the tone of immigration.
There is not a one-size-fits-all thing when we're talking about Latino. We have to be very careful.
In some ways, the soul of the heterosexual white man is at stake.
But bottom line is that as we started to move towards the end of the 20th century, mayors started to see education and improvements in education as key to the quality of life in the cities.
But the bigger problem is in our newsrooms management.
The more progress we make toward being a truly inclusive society, the more we realize how far we still have to go. Regardless of individual politics, most Americans recognize Barack Obama's election as an important social milestone for our country. Harvard Law School professor and author Randall Kennedy recently wrote that President Obama's election has changed the perception of what's possible in America. But Professor Kennedy also cautions against what he calls an inflated sense of accomplishment when it comes to racial progress.
Like, race has always had an underpinning in the political system. Politics and laws were used to enforce people's beliefs about race. But there was a moral component to the racial discussion.
The Latino and Asian community still are groups very much up for grabs. In the LA Times poll, for example, in the 2010 vote, you saw Asians and Latinos, they're soft Democrats. They're leaning Democrat. A lot of the Asian vote is still independent.
I think that there are people who feel under siege by immigrants in this country, who think this is not the America they grew up in, and they feel like, you know, somebody needs to be a voice for them. And much of that has come in terms of the Republican base from an element we would identify as the Tea Party, saying, you know what, this is not illegitimate.
We knew very much to his point about within the Republican Party, there was a very strategic meeting that happened in 1999 that we were doing the math that said if we did not earn more than 35% of the Hispanic vote after 2008, we would cease to be a majority party again.
Latinos care mostly about the economy, like everybody else. It's the #1 issue for the Latino community. But immigration is what we call a filter issue, if you will. Meaning that if we don't like the way, if Latinos don't like the way that you're speaking to the community about immigration, they're not going to listen to you.
We also need to start talking to the young people because they're the fastest growing demographic. 50% of all Latino voters are under the age of 40. If you want to talk to them, start talking to them in bilingual radio.
You know, we are looking at a political reality. The country is only going to get gayer, blacker, browner, and more Asian. Diversity is destiny, right?
The election of Obama has thrown the discussion of diversity and race into total conflict.
The white prism that's connected to that slavery still exists. It's a white prism, okay, which defines African Americans still, from my particular point of view. And look at Brewer's finger pointing at Obama at the airport. Now, if that isn't the biggest disrespectful kind of relationship and of behavior that I've ever seen, it goes back to the antebellum junk.
It's hard to quantify a kid's ambition. You know, you may get some young man, young woman who has got this great vision of what they want to do. They don't test very well on your standard test, but they do great artwork or something like that.
All of these structures and LSATs and scores and organizations and change and challenges and vouchers are moot if there is someone in that school who doesn't see the potential for a Nicaraguan Mexican child who dreams of being the first in her family to go further in life and nixes it.
So
Impact.
What the research says clearly is that the single most important in-school factor is the quality of the teacher.
How do you, in directing a news bureau, cope with racial stereotypes in this new age, in this 21st century?
I think that when you have a thriving editorial discussion on the inside with a makeup of qualified journalists who frankly look like America, because that's our challenge on the inside, to make sure that the discussion that we have reflects what the audience expects to be served.
I think the issue is that you have to have more diversity within the newsrooms. You need people there to police you need someone there to police it to make sure it doesn't really get out there to the public to begin with.
Speaking for Comcast, we want our employee community and our vendor community to reflect the growing diversity of our customer community. And we want programming that reflects the rich diversity of the thousands of communities in which our employees live and work. We're not there yet, but the trying makes us a stronger company every year.